So what does deep sleep do?
So it gives our body a break, and our body and our brain a break.
I've read places that there's an ideal length of a nap. And if I let myself sleep without an alarm clock, I'll sleep for 2 full hours.
Okay.
And is that bad? Is that hurting me?
No, not necessarily.
I do want to talk about screens. I feel like it's the elephant in the room.
Really leave the bedtime for sleep and sex.
My main job is a morning show radio host, which means I get up Monday through Friday at 4 a.m. You never get used to it. People ask me all the time, and you never, ever get used to it. Most nights, I am desperately trying to be in bed by 8 p.m. I go to bed before my 7-year-old son does most nights. If I get to bed at 8 p.m. and promptly fall asleep, which is not something that happens every time, I'll get close to 8 hours of sleep. Most nights, I think I get an average of about 7, which isn't too bad. And yet, every day around 1 p.m., I need to nap. Honestly, if you sit me down for longer than 20 minutes, I most likely will feel a nap coming on. I feel so badly for people who battle insomnia. At least I get a paycheck for depriving my body of sleep. And honestly, I don't see how we've made it as a species. If you've ever had to raise a newborn, you know the level of sleep deprivation that comes in that first year, especially those first 6 months. So, how much sleep do we really need? Does the sun affect our sleep? Can you sleep too much? My name is Sarah King, and I think I'm speaking for every adult that I know because I have questions, and so do they, about sleep. I'm here with Narissa Price, MD. She is with WakeMed Hospital here in Raleigh. She's a psychiatrist. And we're talking about sleeping today. And I am happy to be the person who sleeps well.
Yeah.
You know, so these aren't coming from me. These are coming from my friends. Yeah. And I have lots of friends who tell me they can't sleep through the night. Yeah. They wake up or, you know, they have a really hard time turning off their brain. Mm-hmm. So let's start with that. Mm-hmm. Why do people wake up in the middle of the night? What is that all about? You would think once you start sleeping, you're just going to stay sleeping because you're sleeping and that's the best.
Well, the first thing I just want to say is for those who don't sleep well, that you're not alone. That it's incredibly common, insomnia.
Yeah.
And, you know, it looks like different things for different people. It may be that they're having a hard time falling asleep, so that shutting off the brain kind of thing.
Right.
Running through all the to-dos that they have to do. Or it might be that they do fall asleep, but then later they wake up during the night. Right. Maybe it's a bad dream. Maybe they just get overheated or they've been in this position long enough that it causes some pain.
Yeah.
And so there's really lots of different reasons why someone may have difficulty sleeping. But it's normal to have it at some point.
Yeah. But why do people, once you wake up in the middle of the night, my friend Shannon, she's the worst.
Okay.
I will see messages sent from her. She's Instagramming middle of the night. I have told her so many times, I'm like, girl, put the phone down.
Put the phone down.
But she's not alone in that.
Yeah, right.
But there's other people who will even try to go to sleep and they'll still not be able to. What's going on there?
Right. So there can be several reasons. So as I alluded to, there may be some underlying physical reasons why. So for example, some folks may have a sleep disorder where they have sleep apnea or restless leg syndrome. And those are physical conditions that prevent you from having a restful sleep. There are others that might have mental health concerns. So if you have depression or anxiety, you literally cannot shut your brain off, or you may not, be able to sleep restfully because of the weight of those mental health conditions. And so there may be lots of different reasons. So if someone is having difficulty sleeping, it would be a good idea perhaps to see a medical professional to help tease out kind of why that is.
But let's just say you do have depression, or anxiety or some kind of mental thing.
Or stress.
Yeah. What are some ways to fall asleep once you've woken up in the middle of the night?
Well, a lot of times we can be our worst enemies when it comes to sleep. We have bad habits.
Yeah.
So, for example, instead of going to bed to go to sleep, we have our phone. Mm-hmm. And that's when we go through our social media. Or, those of us who enjoy a little caffeine every now and again, maybe we've been drinking caffeine up until the night. And that can wake us up.
Right.
And so the first thing we need to do is look at our, what we call sleep hygiene, but it's like our sleep habits. Are we setting ourselves up for failure with sleep? Is it dark enough? Is it the right temperature in the room? Are we really going to bed to sleep, or are we then like picking up a book on the side of our table, or are we looking at social media? Really leave the bedtime for sleep and sex.
I want to ask you about the fact that you said, is it dark enough?
Yeah.
Because some people fall asleep to the TV. I personally can't, because it's like bling, 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 like the lights I can see.
Sure.
Is there any health problems that come from not sleeping with full darkness?
So it's interesting. Even though you may go to sleep, our brain is still working. It's still processing things that have happened the day before. It's still doing, physiological things around our body for maintenance.
Okay.
And if you have the TV on, or radio or something, the brain is still taking that in. And it's still processing that. So you're not probably going to sleep as deeply as you need to. And you do need to get through deep cycles of sleep in order to have a restful sleep.
So what does deep sleep do?
So it gives our body a break, and our body and our brain a break to restore itself. And so if we're avoiding that deep sleep, maybe unintentionally, but it really can cause us long-term problems.
Like what?
And so, for example, if we're not sleeping deeply, we're going to be fatigued the next day. So a lot of times patients may come to me and they're complaining about like, gosh, my memory's awful.
Right.
But really what I find out is that they're not sleeping to begin with. They're not really going through that restful sleep. And so when they're waking up, they're not really concentrating to begin with. They're not really absorbing the data.
So if you want to have a clear mind.
If you want to have a clear mind, you got to have good sleep. Like that's a part of that.
Well, does things like you hear meditation can help with all that? Does
Absolutely.
that mimic sleep?
So no, but meditation does have benefits with sleep. It also has benefit with depression, anxiety. It can lower blood pressure as well. So adults are supposed to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep.
Right.
Right. And so a lot of people were saying, yeah, right.
Yeah, if you're a parent, forget about it.
Right. So this might be a next best step, that if you have 5-10 minutes to do some meditation, so you at least kind of get a little bit of rest.
Yeah.
A little bit of the benefit of a resting brain.
You know what stops me from meditating is because when I'm tired, I'm like, I probably should meditate. My brain feels tired. I know I'm going to fall asleep.
You're going to... Which is the problem to begin with,
yes,
right?
I'm like, I've got 10 minutes. I can't pass out right now.
Right, exactly. But hey, sometimes you have to take that 10 minutes if you can.
Oh, yeah. Like, what about disco naps? Those like, I've heard stories that well, not stories so much, but I've read places that there's an ideal length of a nap.
Yeah.
And if you sleep, I work in morning radio.
Sure.
I get up at 4 a.m. every day. Oof. Yeah, I try to go to bed at 8.
Okay.
That would be 8 hours. I did the math long ago.
Right.
It doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
Shocker.
Yeah.
So I take naps every day. And if I
Right.
let myself sleep without an alarm clock, I'll sleep for 2 full hours.
Okay.
And is that bad? Is that hurting me?
No, not necessarily. Now, I will tell you, so naps can be good and bad.
Okay.
So if they truly are a situation, as you said, that it's impossible to get the 8 hours, and really this is the way you can get that extra sleep that you need. I'm not going to, say anything about that.
Okay.
But sometimes it can be a habit that we prefer the naps.
Yeah.
And then we say, well, now I can stay up later. And that's still the more ideal, is to get that full, continuous 7 to 9 hours of sleep. That's still the ideal.
Okay.
But if you need a nap and that does seem to restore you, then and I don't think that there's necessarily a time limit per se. It's what your body needs.
So if I wake up and my eyes are like blinking, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like the strobe light effect.
I do.
What does that mean? Does that mean that I've slept too long? I woke up in REM? Do you know?
No, not necessarily. I mean, here's another thing about sleep and a lot of things, that I feel like we over pathologize a lot of things.
Oh, I've never heard a doctor say that before.
We do. And we immediately assume something's wrong.
Right.
And it's not necessarily, bodies are different. We have quirks.
Yeah.
And when I get concerned, especially when it comes to sleep, if a person comes to me and they can point to, I am not functioning well, I'm not able to achieve the things I need to in life.
Right.
And this has been going on for more than a month. Then I'm worried. Beyond that, I'm like,
It's probably just a fluke.
it's probably okay. It's human.
Yeah. I love that answer. All right. I do want to talk about screens. I feel like it's the elephant in the room because you hear about, you're supposed to basically turn down your lights and turn off the TV and turn off the stereo and turn off your screen.
Right.
We live in 2023. This is not going to happen.
Right.
Or does it happen for you? Are you amazing with your sleep hygiene?
I'm actually one of those enviable people that can sleep almost anywhere, anytime.
I know. I feel like I said the same thing. So anybody listening to this is like, these people don't know my hell.
Yeah. So for me, but I will say that is part of our problem, is that our brains really haven't caught up with our society, that we're constantly on, that we can pick up the phone and be entertained or see something from, whatever, at any time of the day. And that's not always good.
Yeah.
And so we do need to kind of set some limits. So that's why, to your friend who has a phone near her bed, how about move the phone to another room?
Girl, I've told her this. She does not listen.
I know it's kind of an addiction in a way, really what it is. And I remember in the olden times, like, I'm old enough to say this, that we functioned without phones just fine.
I was alive also before phones. I remember it clearly. Yes,
Right.
you're absolutely right. And we slept better.
We did.
Yeah.
So some of that we may have to let go of. Like, again, you need your social media time, fine, but maybe the 2 hours before sleep, I really would try to wind down and try to look at more calming. Maybe it's meditation, maybe it's listening to easy music or whatnot. But
how about TV?
Again, if it's super activating right before sleep, I think that might be something to look at.
Calm TV, like watching a nature documentary or something.
I think that could be great.
Okay. That's good.
Sure. Anything that you can start to feel yourselves breathing deeply and restfully, I would say that's okay. Anything that's like making you feel tense or too excitable, I would say probably not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when do I know I need to call you, the psychiatrist, to say I need some medicine?
Yeah.
My sleep is broken.
Well, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Like, again, medical doctor that I am, I'm probably not going to throw medicines at you first.
Which is great. And you don't hear that every day.
So
I'm falling in love with you right now.
But probably what I'm going to do is get a sense from you what your sleep patterns really look like. What are your habits like?
Sure.
When you're drinking caffeine, when you're looking at social media, those sort of things first. I may have you do what they call a sleep diary as well, so I can have more information.
Okay.
I also might want to know what's going on in your life. Like, have you had more stress going on? And that can certainly trigger some insomnia. Or has this been a pattern that you've had your whole life?
Right.
Like, it really depends. And so I'll do a really good history to kind of figure that out before I look at what the options are. And there are a lot of non-medical options. In fact, there is a type of therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, for insomnia that's been shown to be just as successful with insomnia as sleeping medications.
What about weighted blankets?
So, again, for some folks, that's very helpful. If
what
they
is
like
it about that?
I think it brings us back to our infancy.
Yeah.
And that kind of the swaddle type approach. And so it's very primitive. But for some people, it's suffocating and it can actually trigger anxiety. So again, let's have some self-compassion here in this whole process and try the things that may work for you. Might be different than what they were for others.
Okay. I do have one last question.
Yeah.
So teens versus children versus adults versus the elderly.
Yes, right.
Sleep changes different ages.
Absolutely.
And then let's not even get into parenthood. I feel like that's a whole other podcast.
Oh, I know. And in general, the pattern is from young to old, your sleep goes down.
Okay, but what about teenagers? You hear that they sleep like crazy.
They need to because they're growing. Their bodies need. So again, like, you got to think about what's the job of sleep. Is that there's stuff going on when you're out having pleasant dreams about whatever, that your body needs that time to recover and to grow. And so babies need a lot. They may need up to 20 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
Teenagers, though, may need up to 14 hours, which, again, seems like, right.
That's because they're so irrational in so many other ways. You don't want to believe them.
Sure, but they do. They need it.
Do.
It's not just them like pretending. They really do need that. But adults 7 to 9, older adults maybe closer to 7. So it decreases. It also becomes more difficult the older we sleep.
Yeah,
get age as well.
Why is it? What happens? Is it because we're not growing anymore? We don't have to recover so much that when we get to our 60s and 70s that it gets harder?
Well, it's that, and also our brain changes.
Oh dear.
And so, this again, it's normal. We
just don't know about it.
We don't know about it, so we assume something's wrong with me.
Yes.
But no, it's actually normal. And you think about with an older person, their day may look very different than if you're raising children and having.
I would hope
it should be.
Yeah.
And so it's just a natural shift.
Okay. Well, I have learned a lot today. Thank you
Good.
so much for being so open and being willing to answer all my questions because I know there was a lot of them. Honestly, I am relieved that taking my daily nap is okay. I was really worried about it. Sarah Has Questions is a production of Capital Broadcasting Company. My guest today was Dr. Narissa Price, a WakeMed psychiatrist. To find out more about her or any of the other providers from the WakeMed team, go to wakemed.org. If you have thoughts about any episode or questions you want me to ask in a future episode or ideas for an episode at all, send me a message in the link. You'll find it in the show notes. Thanks for listening.